Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's 60-minute presentation as part of the Wednesday Rainmaking series by the Women Rainmakers of the ABA Law Practice Division. To start today's program, I would like to introduce the co-chair of the webinar committee for the Women Rainmakers, Vedia Jones-Richardson, who will serve as the moderator for today's program. Vedia is a principal with Olive & Olive in Durham, North Carolina, and heads the firm's trademark copyright and transactional group. She is nationally recognized as an authority in the field of technology, computer, and internet law, and is certified by the North Carolina State Bar as a trademark law specialist. Vedia's breadth of experience in various industries, combined with her immersion in real-world business challenges, adds up to a unique skill set that she puts to work in helping clients achieve their goals. Thank you all for joining us. We'll now begin the webinar.
Thank you so much, Sasha. We thank all the women rainmakers around the country who have chosen to join us today and learn more about making hybrid reconnection work for you in 2022. Before we start the program, I want to share with you the mission of the ABA Women Rainmakers, which is to educate professional women about marketing and business development, to provide mentoring opportunities for members, and to provide networking opportunities to build personal and professional relationships. You can find up-to-date information regarding our initiatives and programming by visiting the ABA Women Rainmakers homepage at americanbar.org/groups/committees/wr-committee.html. Lots there, but we can put that in the chat for you. We are fortunate today to have a wonderful panel to provide tips and insights on making hybrid connection work for you in 2022. Today's panelists are Ann Collier and Carol Greenwald. Ann is the CEO of Arudia, a firm that is dedicated to improving culture, collaboration, and communication. Ann is an expert leadership coach, steadfast in her commitment to excellence and her clients' goals. In her column, The Thriving Lawyer, in the Law Practice magazine put out by this division, Ann focuses on the how-tos of developing a strong sense of self, resilience, managing stress, and managing and leading oneself and others. Carol is a business development, networking, and management strategist, trainer, and coach. She works with professionals and professional service firms to structure and implement targeted practical programs built around clients and client service. Her book, Strategic Networking for Introverts, Extroverts, and Everyone in Between, which is put out by the American Bar Association, this law practice division, published in 2019, and that forms the basis for training and coaching programs that link strategic networking activities with both personal and firm goals. So I really appreciate having both of you on this panel today, particularly for this topic. We're here to talk about handling reconnection in today's hybrid environment, and you each have such valuable expertise on the topic of effective communication, while offering somewhat different perspectives. And your work focuses largely on leadership and group dynamics, and Carol, your work focuses more on one-on-one communications. So both of these are really important aspects of effective communication, and particularly in today's hybrid communications environment, we need to know how to operate from all perspectives. So let's get to it. We've decided to organize this topic or this discussion around four topic areas, four different points of interest. Thriving in a remote and hybrid environment is the first. Then we'll talk some about effective communication techniques. And then talk specifically about approaches to networking and business development, and wrap up with some discussion about considerations for team dynamics. So I think this would provide a useful framework for our discussion. And I think I'll start with a question to Anne. So as we talk about thriving in a remote and hybrid environment, and all of us are emerging from the crazy year and a half we've all had and trying to figure out how to negotiate our way from here on in our new normal, what should we be thinking about as we plan for the coming year, Anne?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I just want to say it's an honor, Vedia, to be on another panel with you and with Carol. Carol and I have been, and Vedia and I have been friends for over 15 years. And Carol and I, you'll see, we often have different viewpoints, which makes for an interesting discussion. And also I'm hoping that will be really supportive of everybody who, this is not a one size fits all solution. But getting back to your question, Vedia, so following along the theme of no one size fits all solution, there is no one size fits all to re-engaging with people and planning for the coming year. Some of my clients are still are very much out and about. Some have medical reasons or just are extremely cautious and are staying in. So the key really is to honor everybody's needs around communication. One of my clients, who is a social worker, said she thinks actually people are going to have more difficulty coming out of the pandemic than going into it, because it just sort of happens. So just being sensitive to that. The other thing is not, as we plan, being flexible. People are wondering, can we plan in-person events? I'd like to have a dinner. Some people are going to be game for a dinner, so do that. Obviously most of us are lawyers here, so make sure you've got an out or some flexibility in terms of numbers. And I would also say that short-term planning is easier than long-term planning. So I can plan to have a dinner for anybody who can make it in a week and a half, but can I plan for February? I don't know. I don't know if I feel comfortable with that. So part of that depends on your risk averse, losing deposits and that sort of thing. But I would also say, and this is one of the resources that you'll get is about not taking things personally. People are not returning phone calls and emails like they used to. People are burned out, they're caring, they're caregivers, they've got a lot of work. Maybe they just have decided, it's time to start celebrating for the holidays, or they're actually taking a real vacation. So it's a numbers game. Don't take anything personally. I can remember one time when a client missed a call, so we rescheduled and he missed it again. And then I had this feeling like, oh, something might be wrong here. And it turns out he almost ruptured his aorta. So again, that is not personal, but my point really is you just don't know what's going on. So be persistent, but not a stalker.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Carol, what are you thinking about and talking to people about as they think about the coming year?
I'm talking to them about job choices and about how they see remote. When we started this thing, remote meant get the hell out of Arkansas or wherever, and stay out of the office. And we all left in 24 hours. It was amazing. It was just like, there was a Pied Piper and everybody followed them out of offices and they were empty the next day. But now we have to go back. And what hybrid means is I don't know. Hybrid means maybe. Hybrid means let's see what's going to happen. To leadership, it doesn't mean that to the employees. To employees, hybrid means you'll respect me, you'll take my choices for granted. You will give me not just the chance to not be in the office, but also flexibility. Because what came out of the last 2 years is a renewed interest in people putting new values on their life and saying our life should not revolve around work. Work should fit into our full life. This is a 180 change. This is an inflection point, as leaders like to say. We need to take it and understand it and make it work. And to do that, the leaders have to change and employees have to step up. So in our world, associates are employees, other professionals who are not lawyers are employees. Anyone who is not an equity partner is in many ways an employee, although we don't say that out loud. And employees of all levels and all kinds need to step up to leadership and say, we need to construct this to create a value kind of culture where we're valued, our work is valued, our priorities are valued.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
bringing up, go ahead, Anne.
Oh, I was just going to say, and Carol, I'm hearing the same thing from my clients, and what people want is it's the autonomy to have the flexibility.
And that requires accepting them as valued contributors, not as fungible employees. There was just a thing in LinkedIn today about get rid of the word non-lawyer.
Yeah.
No other profession has a non, there's no such thing as a non-doctor. They're called nurses. Oh, no, we can do that. We can change it. And so there was a long list of things people thought we could be called. Not all of them particularly appropriate. They were funny, some of them, but anything is better than being a non. So yeah. I think that's going to happen. So as you can see right from the get-go, Anne and I come from two different areas. And as we laughingly say is Anne is the 100% extrovert. I am the 100% introvert. And that may explain how we get to our answers.
Yeah. Hey, Carol, I'm actually wondering, are you finding that your clients are trusting their team members more, their staff more, or are they struggling with it?
They are not. So I do a panel for the New York Law Journal articles that I do 6 times a year. And on the panel, I ask people if the leadership had consulted the employees about changes in the hours and how remote was going to work. And 97% said no.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are not asking them. And that's the beginning of the disconnect, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And what I'm finding is that the work that I'm doing with clients is creating that trust, like enough communication that there is trust, because it's hard. We're some people in particular are really if you don't have FaceTime, and I'm not talking about the iPhone app, you don't have FaceTime, you're not working. I mean, there are fewer and fewer of those people, but it's still a challenge.
No, they're not fewer and fewer, because most people leading law firms are over 60, and that's how they grew up. Because that's how they grew up and how they achieve success. They're having a hard time changing that. It requires a lot of, out of myself and my experience thinking. That's hard to do. We know that. Yeah, I'm talking to them all the time. Sometimes I think it goes like this, right over their heads.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of feeling along going on now, but a lot of people are so anxious to return to the way things were instead of really seeing things as being different. So hopefully that will change as time goes on, because certainly things are different. And I think we all know that. Well, we know that in our hearts, but we're not all acting like we know it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about reinvigorating relationships and reconnecting. And I was wondering if you can help us think about some things that we can be doing now, what steps we can be taking, measures we can be adopting to reinvigorate our relationships now, particularly as we enter a new year, but are also involved in a holiday season when we're used to being a lot more connected than we are right now.
Well, I've been scheduling a lot of calls with people, and actually right before this call, I got a call from a client, and I actually thanked him for picking up the phone and doing it the old-fashioned way. And he's at least 15 years younger than I am, I think. So because it was just better to talk through it. I have been scheduling, especially now, work is a little bit lighter, but 3 or 4 calls a week that are just catch-up calls with people, good friends. I have had the pleasure of actually, through the American Bar Association, of having a new committee colleague. So we had our 2nd call, and we're planning a 3rd call because there's an opportunity actually to do some work together, I think, and to do some work for the ABA, but also some work. And so we're exploring that. And it's just, for me, it's just fun to, to connect with anybody, new people, old people, that's the extra, Carol will tell you that's the extrovert in me. But I do think that coming together around a purpose feels better sometimes than just scheduling a call. That might be easier for some people. I have found that introverts tend to like to work on committees or volunteers. They've got something they can focus on, something to talk about. The other thing that I would say in connecting is that I've had some of the best conversations with friends, clients, potential clients by just being really authentic. And, reaching out, sharing what I'm going through, laughing about it. We all have our challenges with whatever. And so, but also having being authentic, but also having some positive things to share. I think about some of the really good things that have come out of the pandemic. I'm getting enough sleep. That's always a bonus. I don't miss traveling, but I miss seeing people. I miss going to meetings, that kind of thing.
How about you, Carol? What kind of things have you been doing, and how do you look at getting relationships jump-started again right now?
I think that there's three things that you can do. One is you can email or call or snail mail somebody and say, I just realized it's been a while since we talked. I don't want to wait for the end of the pandemic. Let's connect. And then I like to set up one-on-ones, either a Zoom or some of my colleagues are going back to in-person. What I can't get used to, I live in the burbs, and I can't get used to having to drive to an in-person, because in my calendar, I don't leave time for travel anymore. So I have to start blocking out more time, and then I'm finding, I just forget, because I think I'm going to be sitting at my desk talking to people. So I do think that notes are good. I think it's a wonderful time to reconnect with past clients, because everybody wants to talk about what hybrid means, because hybrid doesn't mean, well, it does, it means combination, but think of all the varieties and combinations you can have. And people want to talk about it. They want to know what other people are doing. They want to know what they can do to make it better, which reminds me, Vedia, there are some questions coming in the chat. When are we taking questions? At the end?
At the end.
Okay.
And we are collecting quite a few. I'm glad to see that.
It's wonderful. Keep asking them, because Ann and I promise we'll answer them later if we don't answer them now, right?
Exactly.
I'm talking
exactly.
for Ann, but we're both of the same sort, that we don't like to leave you hanging there. So we will answer them.
Yeah, we will be putting your contact information in the chat so that the audience members can contact each of us if they'd like to, if they want to follow up further. So let's move on. We've talked a little bit about the environment and responses to that, and we wanted to talk a little bit about specific communications techniques that make sense now. You guys have really suggested quite a few. I love the way there's a focus on reaching out to individuals instead of people as groups. I mean, we often think about remote communication as being more one-to-many, because you can send out a barrage of emails if you like. But I hear you both talking a lot about making one-on-one connections, and I think that's an important thing to remember now. And you mentioned, Carol, that you can save some time with driving around. So, as you said, Ann, take that time and put it into making one-on-one calls and being able to put that time to a different use to establish those connections. We said we would talk a little bit more about different effective communication techniques. And I just want to highlight a question that we had when we were planning for this about how remote and in-office communication patterns differ, and what you each might have to say about that.
Yeah, sure. Carol, do you want to go first this time?
Sure, why not? So,
all right.
Even an introvert talks first sometimes. So, so the patterns are really very different, the way I see it, because of the way the brain works. the brain does not understand Zoom at all, because there's too many of us and there's too little of us. There's too many faces on the screen and there's too little body that they can see. So the brain relies on body language, and it's looking for two things. It's looking for safety. So do I know all of you? Is it going to be okay? And the first thing it does when you go into a room, anywhere, the first thing your brain does is it surveys the room. And it says, is this safe? Who's here? What am I doing? Let me look in the corners and make sure there's no one behind that potted plant. And it does it all the time because the brain has two functions, three. One is to keep us safe. Two is to maximize reproduction. That's why we like to look at baby pictures, no matter how old we are. And three, to manage our bodily functions so that we're as effective as possible in terms of our energy use. So those are the three things that we do. So in an in-person meeting, it's very easy for the brain to assess what's going on. You can look at seating patterns. You can look at people's full body language because I can see below your head and chest. You can follow the interactions as people lean over and talk to each other. They smile, they move, they fidget, they do all these things. Online, the three of us are sitting in the middle of our screens with a fake screen behind us, which keeps you from knowing anything about us except we're talking heads here. And it's very hard. So, and if I do use my hands, they become like crazy ones, right? Because it's a fake background. So I don't. And it's very hard to see it. And it's also very hard to stay involved. In a real meeting, if you wanted to be professional, you would sit up straight and people would notice. Here, it's hard. I mean, unless I really slouch, you can't tell whether I'm sitting up straight, or I'm professionally, or whether I'm kind of relaxing a little bit, whatever. So again, it's very hard to read the signals, and there's too many signals to read. So the brain hates it, and it makes all of what we do online different. So when we talk online, we need to talk louder. If you want to interrupt me, it's much harder than if it's in person. In person, I would see your eye cues, your body cues, and I would know it's time for Anne to talk. I can't tell now unless she raises her hand or Vedia says Anne, or Anne says, that's enough, Carol, or whatever. So to know I'm supposed to stop makes it very difficult. So there are standard procedures, which I think we'll talk about later, that can make you equally effective online as you are offline.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The dynamics of interpersonal communication are totally different. That's fascinating, Carol. Anne, what do you think? We were talking a little bit, you mentioned some things about connection patterns and team dynamics there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of a few clients that actually run legal teams. One in particular is kind of, she's always got her finger on the pulse of what everybody's doing, because she's sort of the team mama, you know, and helps all the more. She's very senior. She mentors a lot, and they have a very junior team because of some moves and some retirements. And so we have brainstormed a lot about how she can stay connected to, you know, 20, 25 people when she's not seeing them in the office. So what's changed and what is we don't have the random running into you in the hall. Hey, let me poke my head into your office. You know, that's what we've missed. And that is often, you know, as Carol kind of mentioned, that's like the glue. Like I look in, oh, hey, you look like I can interrupt you, or maybe it's a little bit later. So we all want to be safe, as Carol says. And I would say in particular, my more junior clients, associates have suffered the most. They don't want to call a senior partner at home, you know, and then that begs the question, if not home, where? I mean, people are now taking vacations, but the point is that it's hard to tell if somebody's on personal time or not anymore. So when I'm working with leaders, I am encouraging them to set up opportunities to talk to people, you know, to create that sort of that randomness, but it's not random, it's more planned, and to have more casual conversations. So I have some senior lawyers that will say, all right, the first, you know, 10 minutes of the meeting, we're going to go into breakouts and we're not going to talk about work, or we are going to talk about work. but, mixing it up a little bit. So because meetings, staff meetings can become same old, same old. So changing it up sometimes, like this particular lawyer will meet with the whole team, and then the next month he'll meet, with 3 or 4 people in a subgroup at a time. But it requires a lot more work. I can say, as someone who presents a lot virtually, that it's a lot more planning to get virtual right than it is to go in person. I mean, as Carol said.
I think that to follow up on what you were saying about the leader's role, it's essential. And I think one thing they can do is they can say the first 10 minutes, we're all going to just say, how are you? And the leader can demonstrate that by, when they see them, instead of just saying, hello, Jane, having a social kind of small talk kind of comment that people ask as they go along. I have a friend who runs a lot of online meetings, and her favorite one is, what's your favorite kind of shoe? Which is like, okay, I haven't thought about my feet in a while because they're not showing. So it doesn't matter. But the other thing is that leaders are being called upon to create timelines, timetables. So a leader can say, between 9 and 11 every day, I'm going to be available for calls. And I expect all of you to calendar in some time so that we can just chat and catch up and make sure we're on the same page. They can also calendar times for no meetings at all. And they can also, some of them, what they're doing, not in law firms, but in businesses, particularly tech businesses, is saying there'll be no meeting calls, work calls on weekends. Everybody has to take their vacation, in a year. They must take it. They can't bank it. They won't get it anymore. And all kinds of things like that that are forcing the boundaries that community used to have.
Yeah, no, Carol, your point about boundaries is so important. But so both letting people know when it's like, yes, I'm inviting you in, and like, no, I'm the leader, I'm establishing that vacations are important. One of my clients, who has a small team that was understaffed, actually, and I commended him for this, worked it out so that last summer, everybody got their vacation and there was coverage. So being thoughtful about it, not just leaving it up, but actually taking, all of this takes time, but that's
what they have to do now.
I am really hearing you both saying that everything is almost takes a relearning, a new way of thinking that is not what we, have grown accustomed to. And we all need to learn a lot about how to change and be successful. I'm almost wondering, if there's anything about operating in a remote or a hybrid environment that's actually makes communication easier than it was, and whether there's any benefits.
Anna and I disagree on this. And you go first.
Yes, I know, but I was about to say, Carol, it sounds like we're agreeing on just about everything. I know, the worlds really are colliding. Actually, I think we do. Well, I'll leave it to you to decide if we agree or not. I will say, I think we all miss seeing different people and miss seeing people. The time save is a definite benefit. And I, as I was preparing for this and thinking about different relationships, I have a friend that is a very good friend that has been a client on and off, that I met over 10 years ago before Zoom, or maybe Zoom was around, but because he's Dutch, and he was part of a US executive leadership program, and I was coaching him, and we would use Skype. So he was out of 30 leaders, he was the only one that I saw, by Skype. And he and I and his wife, my husband, we're all friends now because we did form that connection, and we were intentional about staying in touch. So is it as good as in person? No, but can you make it work? Yeah. I think that, and I think there's some real downsides to hybrid. I think that I am hesitant to make about stereotypes about any generation, but one of the things about being in the office is it sort of forces millennials to interact with people and develop more confidence in working with people who have a lot more experience. And I think the downside of remote and even hybrid is that is that though kind of those that need it the most to connect and learn may be the shyest and I used to be painfully shy, so I feel like I can say that with some authenticity, but will avoid the situation even though it's best for them. But then when we have a kind of a mandatory hybrid 2 or 3 times, a week coming in, and by the way, it's some of the more senior people, like my husband never wants to go back to the office and he's in his 70s. So, but I think there's a real loss there in terms of mentoring and learning. And my fear about this, if this goes on, is that over time, if we're too virtual, we've got to really focus on how to make sure that the young people, the younger lawyers, are being trained.
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. One is that younger lawyers, particularly Gen Z, which go from 9 to 25, really want connections. What they don't want is to be told what day and what time to connect. That's it. If people think that the issue is where am I working? No, the issue is when do I have to be there? That's what millennials and Gen Z care about. And that's what we have never had to tackle in an office. So to build on what Anne was saying, there's been some writing now about the need for employees to step up and to create internal networks that will help them position themselves as informal power leaders, because we all know there are informal leaders. Every clique has a leader. That person is an informal leader. Cliques are not necessarily bad. They're also called teams. They're also called best friends. They're also called mentors. They're called all kinds of things, but what they mean is that you have a relationship with them that is of some value to you. And so what they're saying is be intentional about that. Step out in your environment, meet people who are within your class, whether it's in your practice area or across practice areas. Make sure you have mentors, not just one necessarily, but several. Maybe a mentor if you're young and where you practice area you think you might want to be in, but the firm is starting you in another one because they think you're better suited for that. Well, make friends across it. When somebody brings up something you don't know, ask people who know about it. Go to other people in the firm, go to your leader and say, who knows more about this than anyone else in the firm? And then set up time to meet them, be very intentional. And the people who make the broadest purpose-driven networks are the people who are the most valuable within the firm, whether they're working at home or working in the office.
Those are really good ideas. I mean, yeah, and we are going to have some more discussion about interpersonal relationships in teams and in the office too, further down in the program. Wanted to talk a little bit though about networking and business development in particular. We've had some really good discussions about operating within your environments, but what about business development and networking with people that you know, people you don't yet know? What are some useful techniques for business development in a hybrid interaction environment? Anne.
All right, I'm going to go first so Carol can disagree with me.
I was agreeing on the last one. I was right behind you.
I know. It depends on what, I, as Vedia pointed out when we were preparing about this, when I talk about social media, I am not talking about spending a lot of time, on social media instead of practicing law. It's about being, it's to take a point from Carol's, handbook, it's about being organized, deliberate, intentional, and having somebody else do sort of the grunt work of social media. And that's how I do social media. But actually what's working, what the experts are saying is that webinars work, short newsletters work, that LinkedIn ads, that kind of stuff, that's just kind of garbage. But also what I would say, as I've worked with clients and also my social media strategist, is that better and more usable websites. Lawyers' websites tend to be so text heavy, and we're a little bit burned out on reading. I think they're hard to use. And I would also say, in person is just so important. We sort of covered that, but call, schedule. I had somebody reach out to me and want to see if I could meet for a drink. And because of some vulnerable situations in my family, I'm just not doing that yet. So I'm gonna see if he can meet for a drink or a coffee, by Zoom. I mean, it's not great, but at least we get to talk and connect.
But you know what you could do? You could send him a Starbucks card
Yes.
so
Yes.
that when you have coffee, he has coffee.
Well, and you know
That's
what
a
I
good
did,
tip.
Carol, I'm so glad you suggested that, because I had a friend of mine I had not been able to connect with. And I thought, like, I wonder if something's wrong. So I was able to get her address and her home address, because that's the challenge of sending things if you don't know someone really well. And I actually sent her a Tivana gift package that, you know, and money ended up going to the Women's Bar of DC. And then she called me, you know, and it turns out she had been having some health issues, fighting cancer, and but so appreciated it. So again, I go back to, when someone doesn't get back to you, don't make it personal. And again, don't be a stalker, but be a little creative. I mean, we just happen to have our holiday, you know, send out a Ruth Bader Ginsburg package from Tivana, and that got her attention. So that was great. But yeah, the gift cards, teams doing lunch, sending, you know, lunch to everybody, or cupcakes, things like that. Little things like that, people really appreciate.
Yeah, and they save them to do it online so you can watch them chew, which
Yeah.
is terrible. I hate when people do that.
You know, that just is what it is.
That is what it is, right? But I do think that there are two things that really help you reconnect. One is that in the old days, if you look somebody up, it was considered stalking. Now it's considered research. And so before you're going to have any of these many meetings that you're going to plan, take the time to look up the person, look up the firm, look up the organization, look up the speaker, so that you're informed about what's important to them, what's going on with them. And that will help you to create a conversation that's about the other person. You know, if you do that, then networking is something that's fun to do, like Ann was saying, because you're reconnecting. If you think that it's about showing off what you can do, well, we you know, we all kind of, even extroverts, don't really want to talk about all the time about what wonderful things they've done. And so especially lawyers don't like that. But think about it, that what you're doing is looking for connections where you can help them, because the best networkers are the ones who help. You know, there's a saying that nobody wants to be sold to, but everybody wants to buy. And that's basically the basics of networking. Think about the other person. Be more interested than interesting. You're not out there to get a husband, get a date on the first meeting with somebody. You're out there to find out how good a friend can they be, because how many commonalities are there in what they value and you value, what you like to do and they like to do, how they approach work and how you do it. You're looking for people connections, not for a specific reference or a specific client. That's not going to work. Everybody can tell when you're out there looking for a client. I had somebody who sent me a note for networking. I'd never met her. She's in one of my groups. And she said in the email, she said, I'd like to meet with you because lawyers are a niche of mine. And I know you know a lot of them. And
Wow.
I never answered her. I never replied. I was so angry. And so 2 months went by. And I complained to several of my friends who knew her. And I said, I'm not going to tell her this. I do this for a living. You tell her. So then I got an email from her that said, could we get together to talk? Because I know that we both work with lawyers and I'm sure that we can help each other better. Not perfect, but better. So it's important to understand that networking is not about getting business. Networking is about getting connections, connecting with people, learning to trust them. And all these things, you know, when you trust somebody or when you help somebody, you feel better. So it goes back to the well-being of all of us, lawyers, non-lawyers, whatever we are. It goes back to that. We want to build our sense of well-being by these connections that help other people.
Yeah, there's some good happiness research on that actually we feel better when we help somebody than we actually get helped.
Yep.
I mean, that's the thing. I usually ask somebody, like, how can I help you? And people, and Carol, like you, people know me for, boy, somebody needs some help. Can I connect you to my friend? And I always say yes, because I am just always curious about people. I think it's fun to meet
Me
people.
too. Why do they need help? You know, where are they stuck? because a lot of times
Exactly.
it's an easy fix.
Exactly.
So,
Well, it sounds like, this might be a good opportunity for many of us to go back and just relearn some things we always should have known about basic human interaction and
since kindergarten,
human.
right?
Yeah, yeah. Yep. Take that time and put it to use. Well, we are really close to the end of this discussion, and I can't imagine how quickly this has gone and how much we still could be talking about this. You guys have really shared a lot of really useful tips. We did say we were going to return to the topic of team dynamics a little bit. And I was just wondering if we could talk for just a few minutes about what team members can do to connect better and function more effectively in this hybrid environment. There are a lot of tools that have been offered people to use for communicating remotely, but regardless of those tools, what are the best approaches that people can use to making sure that they are functioning effectively?
Yeah, sure.
Carol. Well, okay, Anne, I'll let you go
ahead, Ann.
first again.
Carol, do you want to go first?
Nope, go
All
ahead.
right. All righty. So, I've talked a little bit about picking up the phone. Team members, I mean, the challenge everybody's had is, detachment versus engagement, or at least that's one of the challenges, and what we're striving to do is to feel like a team, which means that we are engaged. So as a team member, making sure you know what's going on, what you need to do to be prepared for meetings, volunteering even to put together an agenda, or if you're I'll just say this to the more junior lawyers, because this is a complaint I hear from partners and in-house counsel, like, putting on your camera. It's interesting how senior executives and leaders put on the camera and the junior people don't. And so that signals like a lack of confidence potentially, that you're not engaged. Sorry, Carol?
Lack of interest.
Lack of interest, like all of those things. And I hear my CEO clients saying like, yeah, I don't know what's going on there, or, that really kind of frosted me. I asked him to turn his camera on. So it's really about showing that you're engaged and looking for opportunities to be engaged. I mean, if that's, what I would say to be concise, if you're working with someone, so just to go back to the introvert extrovert, if you're an introvert, generally, like the more prepared you are, the better you feel about entering into a new situation. I am clearly an extrovert, and I feel like I can walk into if I have to walk into a situation and I don't know what's going on, it actually sounds like it might be kind of fun.
I stay home.
But when I'm working with introverted clients and we talk about networking, have your news story, have something you can talk about, so that you're ready when you're talking to leadership, know how you can contribute. And if you're presenting sort of skip level or to a client, ask the more senior person, what part of this do you want me to handle? What's my role? All of this shows that you're really interested in the work and in learning. And what I would say is I coached several associates that were kind of 4th, 3rd, and 2nd year in that range. And they really struggled by not being in the office. There was the lack of boundaries. One of them got herself into feeling really just insecure about her work and got behind and then didn't reach out. So you know how that just like snowballs and gets worse and worse, because the longer you wait, the worse it gets. So managing that, and if you notice you're behind, ask for help. The development people at firms are really great. Carol?
So let me just build on what you've said, because I agree with a lot of it. I think that one thing that you can do is that teams should work out when they want meetings. What are we going to discuss that's worth a meeting, as opposed to staff meetings every week because it's Monday at 9 o'clock. Ridiculous, boring, particularly online where the boring level is heightened, because you see it more because of how you're engaged with people. And so don't do it. So the leader has to make sure that they're following what the people of the team members want to do. Another thing for juniors is set up time on a regular basis to talk to your boss about how you're approaching what you're doing, the parts you like, the parts you're struggling with, about how you see it impacting your career. So I'm working a lot on the background for these depositions. And frankly, I'm a little bored by it. I would rather work on something else and tell them what it is, because people don't read your minds, and bosses are not clairvoyant. They don't even want to be clairvoyant. And so you want to help them to understand you and what you want to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know, I would rather be doing this part of the teamwork. Is there a way I can move over? Can I give it to someone else? And if you're brand new and you've never been in the office at all, you need to find two people. You need to find a meeting buddy, somebody who is in the office if it's a hybrid meeting, and who'll tell you what went on, who was snickering with whom, who looked at whom, who raised their hands all the time but never talked, who went out for lunch in the middle of it, who did what, because that's the human connection that you're missing, and you want to know it. Second thing you need is you need that mentor, that person who's going to tell you how what you want to do does or does not fit with the culture of where you're working, because that's very hard to learn culture online.
Yeah. Wow. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Do
we need
anything
to
else on the topic of teams? Because I have a ton of questions coming in.
Oh,
Okay.
I have written articles on teams. So let's go. I think we should go to the questions. I agree with everything Carol said. And I just think it's really about being intentional and talking about it. You know, it's about taking the time, you know?
Yep.
Well, we do have some questions that relate to team dynamics. So that'll allow you to expound a little bit more on this topic. But let me get to the questions, because they really are coming in. Yes, and that's where
Q&A. So try and put them in the Q&A, people. It'll make it easier for us.
Well, that's okay. Sasha is helping me. She's putting all of the questions in the chat directly to me. So, okay. So here's one for both of you on the topic of teams. How do we convey our boundaries to our team members? I don't take it personally when people who don't respond right away, but I feel like sometimes the same grace is not extended to me. And to be clear, on issues that are priority, I'm extra responsive, but on issues that are frankly lower on the list, I don't have the bandwidth to respond immediately. So how do we let other people know that we're responding appropriately and help our team members understand our boundaries?
You know, when I counsel people about how to get new clients, I say to them, the first thing to ask a person is, how do they want to be communicated with? What do they want to use? They want to use their office phone, their mobile device, their home phone. They want to use Zoom. What do they want to do? What time of day and what day of the week do they want to be communicated with, et cetera? And so if teams would start at the beginning of a project and say, let's set some communication guidelines. Let's say that anything that comes in the morning, we will get back to the person by the end of the day. Anything that comes in after 3 o'clock, we'll get back to the person by the next day, so that all the expectations are the same. So set it up just as you would with a client. This is when I can talk with you. This is when I can't. The reason is I'm trying to do your work. And if I'm around all the time and interrupted, I can't. Because
and I hear you saying
the brain hates that.
You also seem to be saying start that conversation, even if somebody else doesn't do it, you can open the door to that discussion.
Anyone can start that conversation, and it will be considered courteous. It will be considered a good collaborative stepping stone. No one will take it personally that you want to corral them into a certain time, because basically you're using courtesy to make it easier for them to respond.
Yeah. Yeah. And to add to Carol's suggestions, and I, by the way, I had that exact conversation with a client yesterday. I don't think you were on the call, but
no, I had it yesterday too. That's very funny. It must have been the weather.
It goes around. But the other thing is maybe even to have a typed up message so you don't have to retype it, where you just can copy and paste and say, thank you for your, thank you for your message. I will turn to this as soon as possible. I anticipate getting back to you tomorrow by noon.
Oh, great.
Because I think sometimes people worry, like, is this in the same abyss? So you sort of check the box on like, yes, I did see it. So the person isn't stressed or as stressed because they know the message was seen, at least, even if you're not able to turn to it. Because I find that in this environment there's a lot about managing your own stress and other people's stress and trying to head it off. So, so if I'm reaching out and I know somebody got the email, then I'm like, okay, well, tomorrow that'll be fine.
That's why, because I'm an introvert, I like guidelines. If I know this is how we're all going to be, then I'm comfortable within it. Even if it wasn't my first choice. Okay, we're all going to follow this. So I feel like a team player.
Yep.
What's next?
That sounds good. So here, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what advice or suggestions do you have for non-associates, junior partners, mid-level folks who would like to seek mentorship and are finding it challenging during the remote hybrid environment?
I'm not sure why they're finding it challenging. I guess because they're not in the office to just kind of walk in and ask them.
Yeah,
or to even identify people, I think,
Yeah,
and develop relationships.
I think you need to figure out where you want to go, because that will help you decide what kind of a mentor you want. And then look around and, again, use the wonderful world of online to research the background of some of the people you like that you might consider to be good mentors, to find out if their experience is something that you want to learn. And then I always tell my clients, whether they're introverts or extroverts, to just ask them. It's a compliment to be invited to be a mentor.
Yeah. So in this case, I actually know this person very well. So I'm going to make a couple of suggestions. One is, if you're looking for somebody at your firm, is to actually really try to work on a project. If you're trying to expand your area of expertise, look to see who that might be, or try to actually go after a client to get work in an area that you want expertise or mentoring on. The other thing is to if you're not a member, to join the American Bar Association and actually join a committee, and try to work on, and that's a way to get involved. Write for some of the magazines, some of the publications, maybe do a book chapter. I mean, there are all sorts of opportunities, but it's about building relationships. And then I completely agree with what Carol said in terms of just reaching out to people who have your expertise, love to build a relationship, that kind of thing.
I think there's a difference, though, particularly for women, between mentors and sponsors. And I think that a mentor alone is not enough if you're a young or relatively junior person. I think you need both. So a mentor, remember, is somebody who's going to be behind you. They're going to be your mother in the office. They're going to support you no matter what happens. They're going to hold your hand when you're crying. You can be vulnerable and they're never going to tell. A sponsor is a person who's willing to use some of their prestige, their connections to help you get ahead. And finding a sponsor is finding someone doing what you're doing. And as Anne said, get involved with them through work together first, and then say to them, I like how you work, how you get new clients. I would really appreciate it if you could help me to move my career forward, and begin to work with us both. A mentor, everybody needs somebody who loves them, and a sponsor. Don't you think, Anne, that they're both important?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely.
Yeah, that's a good distinction, Carol. And I hear you both saying that really being intentional now is more important than ever. You can't expect these things to just tumble into place and happen by chance. But, it also sounds like in this environment, we are actually entitled to be a little bit more forward, as it were, and take on, the initiative of starting relationships that we want to start, rather than waiting for someone to reach out to us, because we're not going to be in the same place at the same time always. So
So
that
Ann
gives
wants to
you-
do 2 questions in the last 6 minutes, so we're going to.
Can we do it?
I think we can. Let me go back to the question list. I see a few things that are kind of overlapping, and we have some thoughts about networking and client development that I'll try to incorporate into one question. One is how to make connections with potential clients or develop new connections that don't exist. And then also a question that kind of is a side part of this is when in a networking event, there often are small groups of people talking, and breaking in can be intimidating. So what's a good way to break in without feeling awkward?
I just wait till there's a pause. I introduce myself. I think if we're talking about virtual networking, it's in some ways it's actually easier because everybody sees everybody. The visual is easier. I also think coming with a couple of things, listening a little bit, and then contributing to the conversation. And I'm going to keep my answers short.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that what you can do is, if you see a group that you want to talk to, the first thing is look at their feet. Make sure it's a good group. Make sure that they're all talking to each other and they're all interested. If one of your feet is going in the opposite direction, it's not. It's a group that's going to disband. So find another one. You don't want to be there. Feet never lie. So just
yeah, I've heard that tip before.
And then just say to them, this conversation sounds really interesting. Would you mind if I joined you? No one ever says no. They just don't. So you can do that. And how to get new clients? Make sure that you're not confined to your best friend group. Take part in online meetings. Most of my in-person groups switched to online. Make sure that they're still there. Make sure that you are still putting yourself out there for that one-on-one with someone you want to get to know, and sharing what you do, why you do it, and who you do it for.
Great. Now, we're again doing the rifle shot, trying to get this in. There are 2 questions that kind of relate more to in-house and team activities. One is about practice group meetings and they're not really being effective and being organized right now, and whether there are any tips for making these meetings more effective. And the other is about just the general idea of how much time is appropriate to spend in the office versus remotely. Can you combine that into one answer?
And your turn. You go.
All right, let me give a short. I have taught how to run meetings. Here's the thing: is you need purpose. What's your topic, your goal? What do you want to accomplish in the meeting? You have somebody guide the discussion. I actually use our coaching model. I can include an article that I've written so you can see that, so that you ask questions and you move around and then you do a wrap up. But you have to have an agenda. I also think it's an opportunity, quite frankly, to have some of the more junior people present on topics and present on what they're working on. So I would use this time for training and really encourage everybody to come to support each other.
Yeah, and I'm getting the impression that this actually comes from somebody who is junior. So any tips for that?
Yeah, I think that a good meeting depends on the leader. You have to have an agenda, you have to be following it, but followers, employees, have to participate. You have to do your homework just like you would for an in-person meeting. You have to be ready, you have to be prepared, you have to participate. So make sure that you raise your hand, that you use the reaction buttons that are down below, that you show by nodding, just as you would in real life, that you're following, that you're listening. If you notice, Vida's been doing that most of the time, whether she agrees with us or not. She's been nodding to show that she listened to us.
Oh, I'm getting it.
And so I'll give you applause for that one. And so make sure that you are showing your participation, no matter how junior you are, because you're always making the impression, showing that you're approachable but professional.
Congratulations, guys. We have hit the top of the hour and you got your answers in. I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, we did it.
Excellent.
This has been wonderful.
High five.
Got it.
So please contact panelists, if you have any more, we appreciate your interest in our series, and we want you to respond in the questionnaire that will follow this and let us know if you have any feedback. We have another one coming up on March 23rd, and our entire 2022 calendar has been sketched out for all of our quarterly webinars. They're on March 23rd, June 22nd, September 21st, and December 4th. So thanks a lot for attending, and thank you both for participating.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye,
It was
everyone. Have
fun.
a great holiday season.
Yep.
That's all the time that we're going to have for today. I'd like to thank our Women Rainmakers Committee and all of you for attending our webinar today. I'd also like to thank Anne, Carol, and Vedia for presenting today. We will now conclude the webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.